I'm so excited that you're here today for day one. We've been working out all the kinks, and I'm so excited. Like, I've never been so happy to see speakers in my life. This is amazing. You can hear me, right? Oh my God, and you can hear me? Oh, this is awesome. Well, thank you for coming. We are in early stage financing, so if you're not here for early stage financing, you could stay, or you can find out where you're supposed to be. I'm going to introduce you to Justin Krause. He's your moderator for this session. Give him a really warm welcome round of applause. And then when he introduces his panelists, give them an even warmer welcome and round of applause. Oh, okay. Y'all are getting warmed up. And then quickly before I hand it over, I just want to remind you of our opening keynote that is later on today, this afternoon at headquarters, as well as our opening bash, which you don't want to miss later on this evening as well. All right. Have fun.
Thank you very much. Olivia, everybody, you guys can hear me okay? Oh, hello? Hello? How's that? Okay? No? We're going to improvise. Hello, how's this? All right, look at that. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Very excited to be here at the 11th annual Denver Startup Week. And just want to start by saying thank you to the title sponsors, Amazon, Capital One Cafe, Dell for Startups, and the Denver Downtown Partnership. Now, this session is part of the Founder Track, which is one of 8 programming tracks aimed at supporting the entire entrepreneurial team. So by attending, you're agreeing to follow our code of conduct, as well as being photographed and recorded on video. Be sure to share your experiences at the session using hashtag right here. Go ahead, say it.
Den Startup Week.
Den Startup Week. Very good. Okay. So, again, my name is Justin Krause. I am a market exec at JP Morgan. I'm actually based in Salt Lake, so on the other side of the mountains, but run a business where we work with venture-backed companies. And very excited for this panel. What I understand at Denver Startup Week is how many people this is your first panel today at the event? Okay. I understand there were over 100 panels to choose from, and these 3 told me this is going to be the best one. So I don't know. That's just what they said, so I'm just going to go along with what they said. So before we introduce the panel, for how many people here have actually raised money before? Okay. How many are planning to raise coming up? Okay, even more. Okay. So how many people here are service providers? Okay, boo, keep your hands. No, I'm joking around. I'm a service provider, that's why I said that. Okay, so anyway, so good. So now we know a little bit about our audience. We've all known each other for 20 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. So we go back a long way. So, okay, so let's introduce the panel real quick, and we're a little bit different order. So let's start with Jess right here. So Jess Lane is the VP of Finance at Suna. So Jess spent 12 years in the corporate world doing everything from accounting to financial planning to corporate strategy at large public companies before jumping ship to her startup journey. She then moved to a small private company that had an exit on a Friday, and she started at Suna the following Monday. All right. She serves as VP of Finance, as I said, at Suna, and over the past 2 years has seen them through their Series A and Series B round. So a practitioner here. So let's welcome Jess to the... So next we're going to go to Kate Beardsley. She's a general partner of Hannah Gray. She's a founding partner, which is a first check firm investing in customer-centric founders, reimagining everyday experiences. She founded Upslope Ventures, the fund associated with Denver's Galvanize, which brought her to Denver, and began her venture career in 2009 as a founding member of L'Air Hippo, NYC's, New York City's, most active seed fund. Get ready for this list. Kate seeded iconic brands like, drumroll please, Venmo, Billy, Self, Warby Parker, Casper, Glossier, and several more. So if you're a consumer-based founder, I know who you should talk to after this. She's the co-chair of the Rocky Mountain Venture Capital Association and is based right here in Denver. So let's give a big round of applause. And last but certainly not least, Leslie Feinzag, who's a co-founder of Graham and Walker, and who actually I think had a police escort to get here because her plane landed like an hour ago. So she's just in from Seattle. So she came just for you guys. And so Graham and Walker is an early stage tech-focused venture capital fund built out of the most prominent and tightly engaged community for women-founded startups and aligned investors across the country. And I think an important point to put out here, Leslie believes in activating the potential of all women in business through programs, community, and early stage VC investments. So welcome and thank you. And I should say we were supposed to have a very talented woman as the moderator here who unfortunately wasn't able to make it. She got stuck with me. Otherwise, you'd have 4 very strong women instead of 3 very strong women and me. So anyway, so why don't we start here? How many people from Denver? Everybody or no? Is there some? Okay. I'm not. That's why I said it's okay. So could we talk a little bit about what brought you to Denver and talk a little bit about the Denver community that you've seen? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Just yell. I'm from Connecticut originally, so I came here by way of New York. In my experience, I moved in 2015. I find that this is just a really welcoming community. I find it's hard to sort of find a native, maybe less so now, but who's, diving into the business scene. I think there's a deeper cultivation of, building and staying here, which is really great. I remember moving from New York in 2015 and my peers in New York thought I had died. They were like, why would you do that? And it was a lot of reasons, right? It was coupled with lifestyle, of course. My husband's a native, so that was an easy decision. At the time, real estate was affordable. No, it's not. But it was more just the opportunity. I remember coming out here and going skiing and meeting a bunch of people, and it was so welcoming, and it reminded me of the early days of New York, of just this community building, and everyone was kind of rowing in the same direction. Funds were really collaborative, companies were really collaborative, and so it was a natural progression that I would join Galvanize, which if you guys have been here a little bit, it kind of was the epicenter for a moment in time of coalescing some of the great local talent, and that kind of bled over into Boulder and Austin, Seattle. What was the other one? Oh, Phoenix was another great campus. So these smaller environments that kind of needed a jump start to get people in like-minded, ideas in the same room. But yeah, I've moved and I haven't looked back, and I love being here. So thanks for welcoming y'all.
I come from Texas originally. I will say y'all, and I can't get rid of it as much as, I don't know, it'll stick around. So, why did I come to Denver? I think the opportunity for innovation and an adventure and the lifestyle, particularly around the startup community. I'm from all parts of Texas, but I think the city I was in, there just wasn't as much. It was much larger corporate, et cetera, which is the background that I was in, which was great. But really just wanted to take a risk and wanted to try it out. So came here. It's actually a very full circle moment. Came to Denver Startup Week 3 years ago. Heard Haley, our co-founder of Suna, speak on a panel. That's how I heard about Suna. And here I am 3 years later speaking on a panel. So very full circle moment, and just love the innovation, the community, and the risk as well, taking a risk and taking a chance. So.
I don't live here. Is this working? Can you all hear me? Okay. So I am not even close to being from here. I'm from San Jose, Costa Rica. I moved to America in 2005 to go to business school in Boston. I got a job at Microsoft that offered a green card, so I moved to Seattle. And then I met my husband, had some babies, got a mortgage, and we call that growing roots. And so I live in Seattle, but half my platform team is actually here in Denver, because in the pandemic, we were called the Female Founders Alliance back then. In the pandemic, we closed our offices and we started hiring remote, and we ended up with a dual headquarter team, half in Seattle, half in Denver. This is the first time that I actually make it here post-pandemic. We have made 30 VC investments in the past 18 months. I am yet to make my first Denver investment. So like, who's raising? I want to know. No, I'm super excited to be here. It's been a super active community forever. We have watched what's happened in Denver with Galvanize, with Techstars. Merge Lane was from here, right? So there's a lot that has come out of Denver that I think other hubs around the country pay attention to. So I'm super excited to be here, and thank you for having me. It's also, I should say, it's my first in-person startup week anywhere since like 2019. I'm thrilled to be here. This is amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So, so we just dive in here. Obviously, we live in interesting times, as you alluded to, not having been anywhere in years, and sort of everything that's going on in the macro environment. The news is not optimistic and positive out there, but how would you guys characterize what you see, and obviously, Jess, a little bit different from your seat, but still relevant, in terms of what the sort of what LinkedIn says, right, or what sort of you read in different journals versus the actual funding environment right now? How has it changed? Do you feel it getting better? Is it kind of still where it was in May? Like, if you want to start.
I can get going. So first, I should say, for 2.5 years, we've been talking about all this unprecedented stuff. This is precedented. So like, there's something to be like, if the funding environment has dried out before, we have lived through it. Really iconic companies have come out of times like this. So, it's not like this has never happened before. So I have a couple of things to say, and Kate and I were on a panel exactly about this a couple of weeks ago, so I'm hoping not to steal your very amazing points, and if I do, like, total credit, please. So I would say two things. First, things have changed very dramatically since May. I think April, May, we went from a very flush, very frothy funding environment where money, if you can believe it, was actually very easy. I know it wasn't equally easy for everyone, but it was relatively easy to get good valuations and to get kind of those FOMO moments, those like frothy fundraisers going. That changed almost overnight on the VC side, and I think it took the founders a little bit longer to catch on to what was happening on the VC side. And so that made for a really slow summer. So that's the first thing that I would say. I think that it's starting to change. It feels like rounds are happening. Valuations are not back to what they were back in April, back in March. But rounds are starting to happen. VCs are starting to get excited again. People are writing checks as far as I can tell. The second thing that I would say that I think is really, really, really important is that the funding environment is it's a tale of two cities. There's a situation that is happening with the later stage companies, the ones that had very high valuations and are still reliant on VC fundraising in order to get to their exit, and that dried up all of a sudden. So that kind of the world of, cross investor or cross investing, that has really dried up. The world of very early stage kind of series pre-seed, series seed, series A is a little bit different because you don't quite have the same burn necessities that a big company does. There's a lot of new funds out there with fresh cash to invest. And I think a lot of VCs recognize that the best companies are born in hard times. And so I think that in the earlier stages, it's a super interesting time to be fundraising. It's a super interesting time to be investing. And I think that it's a little less dire there than it is later on. Let me hand it over to Kate.
Yes, I would agree with that. I've been investing since 2009, so I've seen the up and downs a couple of times. And also I came out here, like I said, in 2015 and trying to get funding for a company, even locally here, it was so hard. I mean, no one wanted to invest in a business where they had to go to a board meeting like out of state, so that was a real challenge. There was this whole coastal investing theory, which I think COVID just kind of blew it out of the water a little bit. People are more excited to take meetings virtually. So know that that's on your side, that you can get the meeting, you can build the relationship. It doesn't have to be this, like, I have to go be in Silicon Valley in order to feel relevant. I think power centers have shifted to people instead of locations, so use that to your advantage. But I do agree with what Leslie was saying, that there's last 2 years, 18 months was not normal. The valuations were exceptional, and I think we all have to consider the real math behind this. If I were in your shoes building a company, I would be terrified of taking a $20 million valuation out of the gate, because that would mean I'd have to grow into that. And Jess can speak to how hard that is, being the person who's watching the numbers and saying, holy shit, like this is an incredible metric that we were able to achieve valuation wise, but there has to be something substantiated beneath it to be able to hold water, especially in downtimes. I'd say rewind back to 2019. So if you were running a company and going through 2020, you were battening down the hatches, trying to figure out how to stay in business while the earth was moving beneath you. So know that you have so much, I'd say, to your advantage now to be able to consider what can you use to your advantage that didn't exist 18 months ago? So don't fixate too much on what everything's being said in the news, because that was kind of fairy dust a little bit a while ago, and focus on the hard numbers, the convincing relationships, all those things that really matter that you can build a story around and build, I would say, the foundation of your business on, and optimize for relationships, not just the number that you're looking for. But I'll let Jess speak to the real process of it.
Well, I feel like from the fundraising point, y'all have kind of touched on the environment right now. We just raised our B in December, so we have some good runway. But I think as finance, you're always looking at when's that next raise going to be. I think we'll get into like kind of more specifics. I do think, like Kate mentioned, using the economic environment to your advantage, and really trying to figure out what your unique value add is in that economic environment. For example, in Suna, when COVID hit, we were purely in studio, meaning customers had to come into our studio to have a photo shoot. And when COVID hit, everybody was staying home, not coming in physically, that in person, that sort of thing. And so we pivoted really fast. This was on our roadmap, but probably 18 months ahead of like where we wanted to, and introduced the virtual photo shoot that now is a huge part of our business that allows people to be anywhere kind of in the world, ship us your product, and you can be part of your photo shoot virtually and don't have to come in. And so sometimes it means thinking ahead of something you thought about in the future that you didn't think you'd get to yet, but times just kind of force you to innovate. And to think a little bit differently. But I do think there's a lot of opportunity to use economic environments to your advantage.
Excellent, thank you. So I guess the sort of jumping off that a little bit, and I guess it's colored by this environment, and the point's well taken that great companies, we can go through a list of companies. Right now, are there business models or scenarios that, as you see, companies come around that you don't feel like this is the best time to be out raising venture capital at this point and looking for alternative sources or trying to do things a slightly different way? Is there anything that leaps off the list?
There's always things that are, I would say, more obvious, right? I think something that we look for as investors, and candidly, people who are looking to join companies, right, is that inspiration of saying, oh yes, I understand that problem they're trying to solve. I understand the vision that founder has. It's easily, concisely communicated, and that's usually the story, that thing that we're looking for. So I would say things that aren't, easily funded are probably, something that obviously is not that, but more layered on complexities where you're hoping that something has to shift down the road in order for your vision to work. I don't want to sit here and say things are bad ideas, because I'm wrong, and it's up to you to bring it to the world and show everyone and convince, team members like Jessica to come join you and help you build that vision. So I think it's just really honing in on what it is, but you have to look at what are the forcing functions that are blowing the wind at your back. I think that's something that we all saw, and this is what Leslie was alluding to. We're in a creative vintage right now. There's a ton of disruptions happening because human beings are looking for other ways to do things because we just had this big barricade in our way for the last 18 months of you cannot do this anymore, so you now have to go get Suna Now. So thinking creatively around what can be a lever to advance you to that next stage very easily based on the new way of doing things. But I don't think there's any no business to fund. I think we can talk about this later, but there's different types of funding for different types of business models that probably are a better fit. So I have to say that venture capital is not perfect for everyone's business. But here, Leslie.
And I don't think I have anything to add. I mean, I think that your last point is probably the first thing that every founder should know. I feel like I wish that I had told myself that a decade ago. Just sort of, I have been in your shoes way longer than I've been in my shoes, right? I've been a VC for a year and a half. I've been a founder for a really long time. I don't think that there are sectors that are specifically more difficult now than they were before. I think across the board, metrics matter more than they used to. And I think for sectors that were already difficult, like anything that had really low barriers to entry or was really crowded or, the bar is higher now to get investment for things like that. What I would say is that there's sectors that are more interesting because of where we are right now, like climate tech is one example, and aging is like a really interesting space right now. So there's things that are really, really interesting in this moment in time for different reasons. But I don't think that maybe, I guess we could rat hole into the Web3 world, maybe because of everything that's happened with crypto. That is one sector where maybe it's a little harder to get around together than it would have been a year ago, certainly. But I'm no expert in Web3, so I kind of don't track the space as much, to really have a conversation about it. Other than that, I honestly think it's business as usual, but the bar is higher. The valuations are a lot more back to reality and back to kind of real kind of substance versus a kind of set by demand supply.
Well, I guess jumping off that point actually, and Jess, it'd be interesting to think about how you track this. Metrics, right? You just mentioned, and we all know pre-profit public companies aren't really a thing right now, right? But it's not happening. So, but as you roll that all the way back, it would be interesting, could you talk a little bit about it, Jess, obviously your color on how you manage that from...
It's really hard to talk about metrics in generalities because it really depends on what your business model is. And a kind of fairly simple Google search will tell you, if this is your business model, then you should be looking at your CAC and LTV, or you should be looking at your gross merchandise value, or you should be looking at your wait list or whatever. I think as a VC, I'm more interested in, can you do the homework? Can you understand what your business model is and figure out what the right metrics are, because the information is out there and there's mentoring to be had all around to help you find those metrics? And are you good at focusing on them and not focusing on too many metrics that take you in too many directions? So for me, it's more, you should educate me about what's important. I have some comparisons from all the other founders that I talk to and all the VCs that I compare things to. But I want to know that you did your homework and that I don't have to kind of chase you for what you should be doing.
I think, yeah, it can be business specific, but I think from step one, tell your best story and put your best foot forward. What is the absolute best story you have to tell about your business, and lead with that. Yes, there are definitely industry standard, and you should also know what those are and be ready to talk about that. But I think lead with your absolute best foot forward. And then for us specifically, I think it's also don't have 15 metrics. Focus on the high value metrics. What that really looks like for us is customer. We are obsessed with our customer. Talking about our customer growth year over year. If you have a repeat part of your business, talk about your customer behavior on how frequently they're repeating, and then talking about their average order value or how much they're spending with you on a cadence to help drive your revenue, and explain that business, and then talk about how that's shifted over time. If you're going from one seed or one round of funding to another, talk about how it's evolved over time to be able to really tell kind of that customer journey, and then you can also lead into the opportunity that's out there for that customer, the enhancements you're making for that customer. For us, it's really all about our customers is where it starts with for us.
Anything to add?
I would just say that I've seen a blending of sectors over the last decade. When I first started in venture, it used to be like, we are a fintech company, full stop. We are a consumer company, full stop. And so I'm seeing a blending of business models and sectors, and I think borrowing business models from years past or decades past. I mean, soon as a business model, the first time Liz pitched it to me, she was like, remember the Sears photo booth, like when you go into Sears, like, well, we're going to do that, but modern, so if you're taking and borrowing from something that worked years ago, which I think is cool, there's creativity in that merging. And just as Jessica was saying, put your best foot forward. So use that creativity because you're thinking of something new. You're trying to explain something new. And so let that shine forward because that's the thing that someone will grab onto and say, you're memorable. You want to be memorable. The numbers sometimes are not memorable, but the way you talk about them and display them can be. So I would absolutely lean into that as much as you can because it's storytelling until Series B practically. So use that.
Excellent. So founder VC alignment, right? Especially in any time, I guess, but right now, let's say. When you think about, maybe this isn't a fair question, but I'll ask it anyway. Is it the terms or is it the partner that's more important?
I think you should answer this. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah, I think you answer this.
I think for us, it's the partner, to be honest. I think for a lot of reasons. I think one, you're getting into business with someone. It is one of the most connected relationship you're going to have as part of this business, and they're going to be part of the future indefinitely. And then so for us, I think we are also very intentional about who we partner with and why we're partnering with them. So I think you develop that relationship, you develop that trust, you develop that kind of mutual agreement, and then the terms will follow.
So that is totally the right answer, but if a VC tells you that, it's really obnoxious. She's right.
I had the same answer.
Perfect. That's it. You see that? That was amazing. One answer, 1 for 3. That's not going to happen on every panel. Best panel, Denver Startup Week right here. Okay. So what else? So how about, this is a really good question. And again, alluding to female founders, right? And diverse founders where what we know is a lot of venture capital networks, specifically historically, were probably not as inclusive and as whatever. You could say that. I will let the panelists speak. I will just talk in generalities. But what about those founders that are out there that don't have a VC network? They didn't go to the right schools. They aren't even in the right geographies, right? I mean, what would you say about that, or approaching or getting connected? Because I do think it's an important thing that gets missed. So.
Yeah, I think that is a great question. And to some extent, the vast majority of us, the vast majority of founders, start out that way, right? Unless you really do kind of do CS at Stanford and whatever, right? Unless you kind of are ready-made and packaged and born into that community, most of us start out that way. And for some, the barriers are higher than for others. But what I would say is, it's 2022, and the first thing I would say is there's a lot of really wonderful communities, events, opportunities where you can start to build that network. You're all here, so you already took a great first step, right? I know lots of businesses that were born out of different startup weeks across the country. So really kind of meeting other founders, meeting people that you just don't know. They might be angel investors. They might connect you with someone. I feel like before I started my first company, I spent something like 6 months in between my last job and the company just having coffee with people and getting to know them and trying to meet more people in spaces that I thought were interesting. So build the network before you need the network is the first thing that I would say. The second is, if you truly have no experience in startups at all, if you are straight out of school, if you have worked in corporate your whole life, if you are a non-traditional founder, maybe you are an artist, maybe you are a lawyer like me, you come from something that is not startups, I think that as a VC, sometimes it can be really hard to make a bet on someone that we know is going to make a lot of first-time founder mistakes. And so we're kind of paying for the mistakes. And that's a little bit hard to do. So if you are truly like never been a part of any of this, my recommendation is like a great first step is get a job at another startup. Because you're going to experience something. Like, go get a job at Suna. You're going to experience it from the inside. I'm doing recruiting for you and everything. Yeah, like they're looking for what, software engineers? No, get a job at a rocket ship. You might get an exit out of it, and even if you don't, you're going to get an experience that is so valuable as a VC that I know that like you went out there and you kind of earned your stripes a little bit that way. It doesn't even have to be that long. It's not like the corporate world where we expect you to stay 5 years before you get promoted. It's really like a couple years as a chief of staff somewhere, a year doing growth or whatever can really, really help. So that's the first, the kind of 2 tips that I would say. For anybody that is a first-time founder that is underrepresented. I mean, we could go more into the underrepresented thing. There's, it is obviously a little bit harder depending on who you are and where you are. But those are 2 really good ways. If you just kind of go out cold based on an idea, that doesn't really work for most people. And I really do mean most people. Certainly not with VCs. Yeah.
One nugget of advice that a fellow panelist at a panel 4 years ago, Lee from Havenly, said, and it was so true then and it's still true now. I say it all the time, and I use this in my own practice, is you have to trigger either emotional or local. If you're looking for advocates, if you're looking for money, if you're looking for advice, you're trying to build your network, those are the 2 avenues that will work best for you if you're trying to kind of start from nowhere, essentially. You have to find people that either care about their community, care about you because you're a part of that community and you are coming in to try to influence that for change, or is there an emotional connection they have to you? I mean, go back into your childhood. Did you play a certain sport? Research these people and try to find connective tissue so that you have something to talk about. So you're memorable. They remember and they want to answer your email when you ask them for something. And how can you be helpful to them? So I think all of that's crucial in what Leslie was saying too.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add.
Okay. I don't believe that's true, Jess, number one. I was and but second of all, no, that was great. What about Jess, how about this? When do you think once a round has been raised, when you think about managing that liquidity and raising another round, how do you think about that? Like the process that you guys have employed through multi-rounds, right? As you see people, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's the world I live in. That is my world. A couple of reflections, I would say, from like very, very, very early, like pre-seed, seed round. I think once you get some investment, a lot of people want to go out and hire sales and marketing. I think that's a mistake. I think you need to really understand your product market fit before you because you don't necessarily know you have something to sell and or what that thing is to sell. So I think it's really important to understand, like very early on in our early days, after every single photo shoot, we would have a follow-up call with our customers. How'd you hear about Suna? Why'd you decide to take a risk here? What is the value add? Now that you've done this, like what's important to you? Like go forward. Like really, really becoming obsessed with like those leads that have then converted into customers. And then once you're 70% there, go hire sales and marketing. Because then you kind of have an idea of like, okay, this is getting some traction. I'm in the right. Now I know like who my target audience is and who I'm trying to sell to. So that's for early stage. For later stages, I think it's understanding how much understanding burn. I mean, we look at burn. I look at it very regularly, but as a leadership team, we look at it monthly, very, very, very regularly, and what that runway does, and different levers in the business. So understanding, your baseline of employees you have right now, what is your baseline burn? And if I want to make these larger bets, whatever these, and we do this every single year, talk about our strategic bets we're making in the business and how much money it's gonna cost to really understand your runway and making some larger bets and how that impacts. If it goes up this much, if it goes up this much, what does that do to my runway? And then, where we're at, really understanding how long you think it's going to take you to raise. We typically, it's taken us about 4.5 months, which is fairly quick, but we always try and ballpark for like 6 to 9 months of it taking to raise. So, anything?
Yeah. So what Jess's bio doesn't mention, she was like Big Four and worked at all these big firms, and now she's bringing all this wonderful experience right to Suna and being very successful there. A question, I guess, for our investors: when you look at the management team, like you alluded to, artists, for instance, as a CEO or whatever, right? Great people, everybody things. Do you look at their team, and are you talking to those founders often about saying like, hey, maybe you got a little deficiency here or you need here? Is that part of your normal cadence with the CEO or with the founding team to just say, I feel like you need more discipline, like if you could find a Jess out there?
I mean, yes and no. I invest very early, right? Like I'm investing just about first check-in or second check, or first institutional check-in or second institutional check-in. And at that stage, what I'm looking for is not necessarily a well-rounded team, because it's so early, right? Like there's a lot of things you should not be hiring that early. What I'm looking for is like, does this team have the specific things that this business necessitates? So if you're pitching me an AI startup, I want to see a chief data scientist, or like I want to see a data scientist, I want to see an AI engineer. If you're pitching me something that is like where it's going to live and die by its UX, then I want to see a PhD in UX, or like I really want to see that. Another one is if it's a company that really is a consumer company, you need a great marketer on that team from day one. You're not going to figure it out later. So I'm looking for the specific, like the first couple of rocks to fill that jar. And then from there on, I mean, truthfully, from the pre-seed to the seed, you're not really hiring all that much. You might be hiring some software engineers, some customer service, or some customer success. You're not really hiring all that much. And by then, they're kind of getting somebody on their board who is coaching them much more kind of in the day-to-day. So I guess kind of yes, but not really. I think that a lot of those roles are very, very stage specific. And while I have you on this topic, one thing that I would add is you don't need to overtitle people in the beginning. And in fact, it's probably bad, because just because somebody is like amazing at the 0 to 1 stage and is like the perfect person for that, they might not be your CTO for like the 1 to 10 and 10 to 100 stages. And so don't overtitle them, because you're going to have to demote them later, or like you're going to have a bad conversation. Don't overtitle people from day one. Leave yourself the kind of realistic scenario, like room to live through a change in leadership, because at each stage, it kind of takes very different things.
Yes, I agree with everything Leslie said. I think I'm thinking of a company we looked at this week. It's top of mind, and I would say I was pushing the founders because they had a pretty deep advisory bench, which is great. I think that's also a great way to demonstrate the access that you have to experts. My assumption going in was that they were all part-time, and that once a Series A came through, they'd probably join full-time. And I'm shocked to learn that these two guys, one who was at a company that's publicly traded for like 18 years, is like quitting and joining full-time. Like both of them are full-time. And so it's a pretty stacked pre-seed, pre-product team. And I say that because I usually don't see that. So there's ways in which you can still lever the expertise, work with like a little bit of, I would say carry ownership, obviously make all that vested, on a vesting schedule, but figure out how you can lean on your network to be able to demonstrate that you have access to certain people. And if you can't get that great CTO because it's not appropriate now and you have a head of product, okay, well that maybe is that person an advisor in some more, so you're trying to create this world where we believe that if this is the rocket ship like Suna, they would come on, they'd quit that job and come work on this one. And so I think that there's just, again, that storytelling that goes in between of who's here working with you 100% now and who might be if this all goes well.
Great. All right. So now we move to the audience participation point of the evening or the afternoon. So we've got terrific panelists. You've heard a lot. So let's get some questions from the audience here. Who's first? Right here. I guess. I don't know. I just got here, so.
Okay. So my question is around, so I know Hannah Gray and both Graham and Walker have applications, which I think is amazing. And especially from the standpoint of, if you don't have the network. But I'm curious, is there a different lens that you apply in looking at applications, given the answers and sort of the, tendency towards looking for the warm intros or the emotional or like some sort of personal connection? So how do you layer that against how you work through applications? And is there anything different that founders should consider in any of those applications?
So what she's talking about is applications on our website. So something that's happened in recent years, which I love, is a button on our website, and there's a bunch of questions, and you can choose to share information with us. We use it for efficiency processes because our team is all distributed. My partner's in New York, our other team members in Los Angeles, and one's in North Dakota. So we're all on different time zones. So it's a way that we get the information out of my inbox, which right now currently sits at 785 emails, and into a system where we spend all of our time in, and the information is laid out in the same format so that we're very efficient. So if we want to go compare, where's that valuation? What's the post? How much have they raised? I want to see the deck. I can get to it very quickly, and we can have that conversation in our partner meeting. And that's where we spend most of our partner meetings. So even if I've known you for 10 years, our kids go to the same school, I don't even need a warm intro, I will still beg you to fill out an application and be like, can you please just do this? And we treat it the exact same way. And candidly, it's a big thing that we spent time on because we're trying to remove bias of front-loading someone who you've known for a long time and trying to remove the emotional attachment you might have to pushing them through, and we can all be blinded by things, and having a much more, I would say, numbers-focused conversation around TAM, market opportunity, and treating them all the same time. So we try to actually funnel through it by date of when you submit an application more so than how well we know you, but we're human, and I'm sure we're messing it up somewhere.
Okay, real answers. We have an application for efficiency reasons, for sure, because we want to be as open as possible. It's in our mission to lower the barriers to come into this world, and because my Twitter DMs in my inbox are also just insane. We use our applications to learn about our process and learn about our own biases, and so we're reviewing our numbers on a quarterly basis, like how many meetings did we take? How many of those resulted in second meetings? How many of those resulted in diligence? Where did those founders originate from? Were they referred to us, or did they come from our pitch, the pitch form on the website? The companies that come through, or let me actually start with the warm intros that do make a difference, at least for me. The only warm intros that really I will go straight to meeting are specific investors. If Kate, for example, I feel like I've sent them companies and I know that they're going to get to meeting because I trust how they invest, and I know that there's spaces that we share. And there's a whole bunch of investors at the pre-seed and seed stage that like to co-invest in those early rounds, that don't like to take up the entire cap table. So if Charles from Precursor, Hannah Gray, there's a bunch of these funds that if they send me a founder like Leslie, I invested in this guy and this gal, and this person, and I think that you're going to like them, I'm going to take a meeting. Other than that, I actually, the kind of a friend introducing me to a founder, that is treated the same as everybody on the pitch form. And the pitch form, what we like to do is, so a couple of things. One is we tend to be a little bit more generous in taking a meeting in the pitch form, just to like lower our own biases. So we have 3 people review every single entry. And if one person is a maybe and 2 are a no, we're going to take that meeting, just so that we don't miss anything, that we don't miss anyone. The second thing that I would say is, and this might be just the nature of our deal flow, which is like 99% female-led. We realized that we were missing a bunch of companies with amazing founders because we didn't realize that they were amazing founders. Because guess what? Women don't talk about themselves, right? Like we don't put it out there, and we don't. So we very recently added an entire new field to the pitch form, and it just says like, why are you the right person to do this? And please don't be shy. And that has really changed how we take meetings, because all of a sudden, so much of our early stage investing is just about interesting people doing interesting things that might have zero signal on the traction side, and we don't want to miss those. Even if we don't invest immediately, they get flagged as like, hey, this is a founder to watch. Maybe I'm going to invest in your next company. Maybe I'm going to, I don't know, maybe you're going to bring an amazing person and like fill the blank that I was needing and invest in this one. So I don't know if that gives you, like, we try. It is very, it is very real. There's people on the other end very dedicated to reviewing those and getting back to people. I guess all I would say is like, don't DM me your pitch, because it's a tire fire in there. Just go to the website. We have a dedicated process for it.
Yeah, over here. I think we got this one right here. I don't know how I'm going to get up there, but that's okay. I can get rid of this.
So I'm going to age myself. I'm 44, and traditionally, angel investors were very early stage. They had something that they could, knowledge that they could share. So one, it was just a very easy fit. Do I even know your space? Second was, do I have a network? Once I've gotten to know you, do I have a network to introduce you to? Last was small money headed to next money. VC traditionally was very wildly spent money. This was impossible meets and spending $1 billion over 10 years on a pitch that was, the meat industry's bad, I want to fix it. VC wasn't very formatted, it was very wildly. Institutional money, SBA loans, and that's where those processes came in. I've noticed that since COVID, all across the board, everybody has gotten into this very formatted way of funding. And so everything's behaving very institutional. I cut my teeth in Orange County. Grant Van Cleve was the president. David Friedman was the vice president. And in a Tech Coast Angels event, with both standing in front, a guy in the back asked, hey, how would I apply? David said, you go to events like this and you meet us and we get to know you, and then if it seems interesting, we introduce you, we put you through the process. Grant said, no. You go to the website, you fill out the form, we have people that look at your applications. Later on over dinner, I was like, what the hell, guys? Like, you were the 2 guys, and you guys gave both wildly different answers. Why are we behaving so institutional when those funds still need to behave very traditionally? Angels need to act like angels, VCs need to act like VCs, banks need to act like banks, but we're all acting like banks right now. And I play both sides of it. I'm a founder, ecosystem advocate, and investor.
I think that you probably have a much...
It's a good question. So his question is, why are we so institutional now, from the angel level all the way up, even to the banking level? I think post-COVID, we've definitely front-loaded information over a face-to-face coffee. So it was one of those things where, how do I learn about you virtually and get emotionally connected to your idea or your application? I mean, we are much more institutional as a first check fund because we're institutionally audited. We've taken institutional money, and so it's just the contract we signed to be fiduciaries. So we have people to answer to make sure that we know what we're doing in terms of our involvement with your company. So it's that's usually an assessment we have in that application is, is this going to be a venture backable business that will scale in a way that we can continue to put money in and will get financial reporting in a way that we're used to having it and our auditors are used to reading it? So the question I think you're also asking is like, is this going to be an easier relationship, or do we both kind of need to learn to get to each other's access point? But candidly, I do think so much has been circulated via social media, and also we all have websites, so we're borrowing. They must know what they're doing. They must know what they're doing, so we'll borrow from them. But I also think it just comes to a transparency, and people are looking for more transparency too. I don't enjoy it, by the way, but.
Yeah, similar answer in that like if you've taken other people's money and you're investing on their behalf and you kind of signed all of these really scary SEC papers, you're a fiduciary of them, and so you do have to do diligence and you do have to do all these things. For very early stage funds, right, or for like first time funds, both Hannah Gray and my fund are both emerging funds. We have to go out and raise from LPs over and over and over again, and we have to show them our audited results, right? And that includes our investing process. So they are looking for discipline. We don't behave like a bank, right? Like we're not kind of looking at your credit score and stuff like that, but we are diligencing the team. We're like talking to them, getting to know them. I think that the more interesting question is in the angel world, like, because I think you're right. I think that the organized angel groups have started to act, even though they're not VCs, they have started to act more VC-like. And I mean, the only hypothesis I have is brand building, because I think that once you are kind of known as a like West Coast Angels, or once you are known as like Pipeline or whatever, then I think that people are going to talk about you, and you want everybody to have. It's a little bit like customer service, right? Like you want people to have a consistent experience, and to the extent possible a good one, so that you're going to continue to get more deal flow under that name. So that's the only reason I've seen kind of those angel groups try to become a little bit more institutionalized in their process, just because they're trying to build their own brand as an angel group so that they get really great deal flow. But in the world of just like pure kind of independent angels who are either kind of tourist angels or like dedicated angels, I still think that they're like out there doing their thing. You know, I mean, like I miss I miss investing without diligence. That was so fun. Can't do it anymore.
Okay, so we have one more question, and then maybe you guys can catch up afterwards. I think so. Are here. I don't know which one. You want to fight it out or now? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Hello. I have a climate tech and clean tech, clean energy company, and I was wondering what kind of things are you looking for as far as product to market fit? Is it mostly the metrics concerned that we have with our business, or are there specific metrics or specific items that you're looking at from all businesses, essentially?
I missed the type of company. Can you repeat it, please?
Climate tech and
Climate
clean
tech.
energy, yes.
So her question was, what are the metrics for specifically the climate tech or clean energy sector? I'm not specifically a climate tech investor, but I will say that if I was only focused on that at pre-seed, which is where I sit, or seed, which is, as Leslie was saying, early check-in, I'm looking for a promise that you can bring technology to market. I'm looking for that strong team that we talked about. I'm looking for pipeline relationship channels, something maybe in a prior life where you have relationships with other B2B partners that can help you along that journey or are willing to pilot with you early on. So these small nuggets of signal that you can bring product to market, and also an understanding of how much capital do you need realistically in order to do that? And does that match with the time horizon in which you hope to do that? And if we caveat with what Jessica was saying before, like incorporating in fundraising timelines, incorporating delays, maybe not a COVID type of black swan event, but things that are in nature. So I would say, again, it's back to that storytelling a little bit, because you probably don't have a ton of metrics unless you're currently running pilots. So it's really putting together a bit of the dream and trying to put real numbers behind it. And then unfortunately, like committing to that timeline and sticking to it. It's fun to go back to companies that are now at Series B and look back to what they said in their seed deck. It's fun.
I don't know that I have anything to. I mean, it's a great answer. Like even within what you call climate tech, it could be like deep tech, and I think for that, then we're looking for. I mean, we probably wouldn't invest in it because it's the capital requirements are much too large for us to participate in something like that. But you might be looking at, okay, well, how far along is the technology? Should they be getting like grants from the government for something like this? If it's not deep tech, if it's something that's more commercializable, then we're looking at, okay, well, do you have people that want to pilot with you? Do you have a like LOI signed? Do you have something out there? So it really kind of, I think it depends on the combination of what you're doing and who you're doing it for, and that gives us the nuggets that we can kind of grab onto. Good luck.
Okay, so we're almost out of time on the best panel of the week, and it's early in the week too. So one quick piece of advice from all three of you for the crowd, and you could be all over the place, whatever you want. Get up and run every day. I don't know. Make something up.
I'm going to say the same thing that I said the other day, and I got like almost like a virtual equivalent of a standing ovation. No, which is like, okay, and again, I have been in your shoes far longer than I've been in my shoes, so just keep that in mind. And like the thing that really strikes me of the past 3 years with the kind of popularization of venture capital is how much we are teaching founders to build for investors. And you should not be building for investors. Founders should be building for customers. And so that's my one piece of advice. Just ignore everything we say and go build a great company and we will follow. Like, trust me, we will find you. That's far more important to build for your customer than it is to build for investors. If all you do is follow investor advice, you're probably going to fail.
That's why we're obsessed with our customers. One piece of advice. I don't know. For me, what I've been just reflecting on is enjoy the ride. I think, and I know it sounds a little cliche, but I think so many times we can be so focused on an end in sight, whether that's raising a round, whether that's, getting an introduction, whatever. But I think there's so much along the way that you can learn about yourself and maybe insights that convince you to pivot in a completely different direction. So don't be so focused on this one end goal that you forget to absorb everything along the way.
Yeah, I echo what they said, but also along the enjoy the ride, like this is, if you're starting a company, it's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life. Leslie and I started funds, which is just kind of along the same lines of awful. Like it's just so hard. And it's going to knock you down so much, but try to look at it as like you're learning something immense. Everyone you're talking to, whether you just don't click with them and they're not helpful and you just feel totally shut down or shut out, there's something that you can take from that and have no conversation just one way. Make sure you leave that conversation with them following up and giving you, who else can you talk to? Can you introduce me to someone else? Like keep trying to kind of carve through and figure out, because it's that connective tissue that'll get you to someone who will be immensely helpful. And in that, surround yourself with people who know what you're going through, because chances are your spouse or your significant other is not going to have the same kind of empathy, but you need probably people to just be sitting next to you in a co-working space or, drinks once a week or something, or just to lean on and say like this, I just really got shut down on this and I just need some feedback, or just someone to pick you up, because that I think will propel you through those really hard meetings and really hard, the pilot didn't work, all that stuff. So I think in my journey, it's really helped to have that kind of community. And congratulations, you all are doing something amazing, and it's hard to cut out on your own and try something new. So I encourage you all to do it.
And just as we wrap up here, I asked them that question because as they spoke, what I heard that was really pretty cool was, first of all, Kate mentioned emotional or local as being two sort of really ways to connect with funders and connect with others. Jess had mentioned one metric to focus on. So not like, boil the ocean, like here's 17 things we track, but here's the things that really matter, customer engagement, whatever the case may be. And finally, maybe the most optimistic one, Leslie said, do you know what you said?
Lots of things, really smart ones.
Incredibly smart ones, but the most optimistic one, the best companies are being founded right now, today. So I think that goes for a lot of people in the room. So thank you very much. Let's give a big round of applause to our panel. And thank you.